I've been hypothermic a few times, and I can tell you, when you climb out of the icy water, the clock starts ticking. My guest today knows the exact length of that countdown because the Navy paid him to teach it to their SEALs and countless others. After 9/11, they needed a mountain warfare expert, and they picked a diver. That call reshaped cold weather survival training for a generation of special operators, and it's the reason this man can teach you to fall in a frozen river and walk yourself dry. He's a 26-year Navy veteran, one of the minds behind the clothing system special operations carried into the mountains, and the man Sitka Gear trusts to build equipment your life might depend on. Welcome to the Silvercore podcast, John Barklow.
Travis, thank you. And let me say, before I forget, that is absolutely the best introduction I have ever gotten. I'm going to get the transcription of that and maybe have it tattooed on my back. That is amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's hard to take 30 years of experience and, succinctly put it in a few sentences, but that was outstanding.
Well, tell me about it. There's so much culling I had to do. You're a man of many talents. You've got a lot of accolades behind you, and I tried to hit the high points in there.
You did. That was outstanding. Thank you very much. Humbling.
Well, I should preface this with the fact that you've got a book coming out, and for the listeners, you guys are going to have an opportunity to win this book. It's called Knowledge from Storms, and it's on pre-order. So I'm going to have, I just thought about it this morning, so I'm going to have that figured out by the end of this podcast. It'll be in the details of how a person can win this book, and you'll be getting your own copy of Knowledge from Storms once that one comes out. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. You put a lot of great content, and holy crow, have you ever come a long way from the boy in Cleveland who had picked mushrooms so he could buy his school clothing?
Yeah. Cleveland, Ohio is not the place that grows mountain men or deep sea divers, right? It's just not the place you would put a pin on the map to do that. But I think what it did, for whatever reason, is it gets you to dream and dream big. And I'm 57, so when I was younger, there was no internet, not even an idea of an internet. So you really had to, look at magazines and buy books and, and talk to people or go to some outdoor show. And it just, man, for a young, adventurous kid, it just gets your mind going because you can't just walk to the ocean. I had little woodlots, but you can't go climb a mountain. So you can only dream about those things and just work them up in your mind.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of spoiled living here in British Columbia because I got mountains and ocean all around me, and it's in my blood. I don't know if I could ever move away from being by the ocean or having mountains somewhere nearby. But what sparked that adventure in you?
I don't know, and I've thought about that a lot, but I would say it could be the same thing that, say, sparked, a kid from Virginia or the Ohio Territory to pack up, go up the Missouri, and head west to become a mountain man or a fur trader. It's always been there is all I can tell people. My dad, he bird hunted, he scuba dove, he did some of those things. But as far as nobody archery hunted, nobody had ever big game hunted. But for whatever reason, it captured my heart is really what it did. And it's never let go 42 years or whatever it is later. At the same time, I think some of the stories of, my dad in the Navy and he wasn't a Navy diver, but his scuba diving exploits in Florida and things like that. It instilled this sense of adventure in me, but then also a sense of frustration because I couldn't then go and do these things as a kid, driving the family station wagon somewhere for a day or a weekend. And so I could not wait to get out of school. The thing that kept me kind of focused was, organized sports and doing that and preparing for those things. But I knew at some point, probably more upon reflection, that I was always going to pursue this other life, outside of the bounds of what, Ohio could provide me.
Well, it was 19 when you joined the Navy?
Yeah.
That was right out of high school, and you're
yeah.
Your father is a big influence in this, was it? Or
Yeah, I think he was a big influence on the military. Not that he promoted it, and I've got three other siblings. I was the only one to go active duty in the military. My brother, who's a doc, my brothers, he was an Air Force officer in the reserves.
Mm.
But yeah, again, I think it was that sense of adventure. I realized that, I tried college. I tried to play football. I knew the football thing wasn't going to work out. College, I was not interested in, and that for whatever reason, this maybe bit of wisdom I had that, I could always go back and be an accountant or sit behind a desk. But if I was going to join the military and want to do these adventurous things, that for my body anyways, I had a shelf life. Definitely the military has a very short time frame of age that you can join and be part of these special programs. And once I got into it, and to this day, I've never regretted it. I've never looked back. I knew that I call it my cardinal direction, like on a map. I knew that I was moving in my cardinal direction. I didn't know all the twists and turns. I didn't know, maybe the stumbles or getting lost and turned around a little bit. But if I kept moving in that direction, and again, this is in hindsight,
Sure.
that I would at least, that I would hopefully become fulfilled and maybe reach the goal. But I never really had like a goal. There were small incremental step goals, but nothing like, oh, I'm going to go and, be on the Silvercore podcast one day, and talk to Travis. Like, I didn't have that kind of.
Well, that's the pinnacle, right?
I didn't have that kind of wisdom, but and that's why I just tell people, like, man, you got to be true to your heart, and then I think everything else will tend to work its way out. Not that it's always easy, but I think you'll be fulfilled. I hope is the goal.
Well, that brings up an interesting question and something for the younger listeners. That cardinal direction that you talk about now with hindsight and being able to look back on this, did you have some form of that cardinal direction in your younger years? And if so, what did that feel like?
Yeah, I did. I didn't have the words to describe it or call it the cardinal direction. I think at the time, and most people even today would just say trying to be true to yourself. So, and I talk about this in the book, but I grew up in a very, ethnically diverse area of Ohio, the Italian neighborhood, the Irish neighborhood, the Polish neighborhood kind of thing. And there were small towns, and, I was one of the local, football stars and the homecoming king and all these kinds of things. And it just seemed like my life was preordained of what it was going to be. And I was handed the script at birth. And I resented that and I rejected it. Not that I acted out as a bad kid necessarily, but, I wasn't good in school because all I could think about was doing these other things. And so, the hardest decision I had to make, and also the best decision I ever made, was to kind of break those shackles and say, no, I'm not cut from this cloth. I'm cut from this other cloth. And I absolutely need to go do this. And I can always come back, which I've never moved back home. Of course, I've been back home. I've got family there, but I could always come back. Right. But at some point, I'm not going to be able to, because of a job or a wife or a girlfriend or kids, like to be able to go do these things. And so, I just tell people you have to be true to yourself, because at the end of the day, making your mom or dad or siblings or even girlfriend, boyfriend happy for a short amount of time is not going to always make you happy. And I think that's where people get this, resentment, and they act out against, maybe their parents or maybe their siblings or spouse because of that. And I just, luckily, it was the hardest decision I ever had to make. And honestly, it was only after my mother said, in a loving way, but the only way an Irish mother could say is, get the hell out of the house and go find something to do, but you're not doing it here.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I was in the Navy. I was shipped off and super happy, and everybody was happy for me because they knew it's like, finally he's going to do it. I was scared.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Were you scared? Yeah.
Absolutely. Scared of the unknown, scared if I could live up to my own expectations, scared of leaving everything I knew, right? you grow up in those small neighborhoods back on the East Coast, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows everybody's business, and everybody goes to the same, you go to the same bar your dad went to and the same bar your granddad went to. And it's like, I appreciate that, but I needed more, or I at least needed to go experience more, and then I could decide for myself. But I wanted to make sure that somebody wasn't telling me what to do, that I could go and figure it out for myself. And I've always kind of been that way. I'm the oldest, right, of 4 kids. So you kind of have that little bit of personality trait baked in.
Sure. It brings to mind, I think it was Harvard. They did the longest study on happiness, what makes people happy. And they studied people from different religious backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, different regions over an 80-year period. And the number one thing that was reported for satisfaction of life and happiness was strong social connections. And growing up in a East Coast small town sort of environment where you've got those traditions and family, grandfather, father, parents, friends will know who you are through your family. I think that might be something that's starting to be missed in today's day and age, where everyone's connected through a phone, through social media, as opposed to the hard, what do they call it, IRL, in real life connections.
Yeah. Well, I think you could be right about that. I'm not, when you get to know me, you're probably not going to say, you're probably not going to apply the modifier happiness to John, right? Like John and happiness, not that I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm more satisfied. I'm more fulfilled. And I would say that I have more of that today than I ever have had in my life. And, but you're right. But I think some of us are, again, how can somebody pick up and go to the middle of the mountains in the 1800s and live by themselves amongst, warring indigenous tribes, and that's what they're cut out for, And I think I'm certainly not here to cast any kind of judgment. I just say make sure that you're doing whatever you're doing for yourself and not others, and then I think you will get that satisfaction, that fulfillment, and and hopefully that happiness.
Yeah, I like how you separate that from satisfaction, fulfillment. I think a lot of people are striving for happiness and they want to be happy. And that whole pursuit presupposes that you aren't right now. And it's something that's in front of you that you're always chasing. And if you can just kind of relax and be satisfied in the moment, happiness is a natural byproduct of those efforts.
There
At
you
least
go.
that's my
Yeah.
perception.
I think that's a great way of saying it. It's a byproduct of the two.
Yeah.
To just chase happiness is kind of this elusive thing that's hard to kind of define, and it's hard to even feel when you're having it. It's like sitting down and having that cup of coffee in the morning. You're like, yeah, I feel pretty good about where things are right now. Yeah.
Well, if you look back, have you felt fulfilled through life as in the same way that you are now? Or were you always kind of striving and, okay, I'm at the top of this mountain, where's the next one?
Yeah, I'm not a person that often looks back or reflects. Pretty goal oriented, driven. Ever since the day I got into the Navy, it was just full steam ahead, and not chasing rank. I wasn't a person that grabbed a lot of rank real quick. It was trying to be really good at what I did, trying to master my craft, trying to be that person that people relied on, and then getting put into positions. Okay, now I need to become a leader, and okay, I've done this thing, say a certain type of diving as an example in Virginia, and okay, I want to go test myself and I want to go forward. And so people can look at that, even myself, as I'm living it, and say, am I fulfilled? Do I feel satisfaction? Because you're always looking to that next horizon. And I would say yes. I would say I was. Now, I think everybody can interpret that a little different, but if somebody were to say at any given time in my military career, hey man, you can leave right now and go do anything else in the world that you want to do, And in all honesty, I'd have said, nope, I'm right where I want to be, doing exactly what I want to do. And that is a blessed man. That is a person who, should be happy at some level, because not everybody ever, always attains that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just tie it back to, being true to myself. Now, let's not blow smoke here. It was every single day, was every single duty station, was every single leader I ever worked for the perfect person? No, but you can still learn from that, and you have to like kind of get out of your own head sometimes and just look around. It's like when I'm in the mountains, right, and I'm getting my ass kicked by the elk, or my physical fitness wasn't wanted to be, or the weather's bad, or the wind's always in the wrong direction. And just being able to take a step back and look around and go, I am so lucky to be here right now getting my butt kicked by these elk, because some people never get that opportunity, right? And that I'm physically capable of doing it, and I live in an area I can pursue those. And again, I think some of that, it's hard as you get older to, I didn't have this wisdom when I was younger, is my point. And it's only upon reflection that, you start to realize these things. I'm glad I'm realizing them in my 50s and not in my 70s or on my deathbed, so I'll chalk it up as a win.
No kidding.
But I have been able to do that at certain points in time. And I look back now, even with this book, and I just pinch myself. I'm like, how did I do what I did? How did I get where I got? How have I been able to accomplish, these things and have these kinds of friends? I don't know. I mean, some of it I'm sure is luck, but some of it is also this, kind of dogged determination to just say, no, I'm supposed to be here. I'm good enough. This is what I am meant to do. And I might not be, the best at it, the top performer in my team or unit, but I'm going to carry my weight, and I'm going to work at, striving to become the best. And, at some point, maybe you get there, maybe you don't, but you can still find satisfaction in that.
Isn't it funny that the harder that you work, the luckier you get?
Yeah. Interesting how that is, right?
It's
luck. Yeah. We call it luck, right? Or I like the overnight successes that we see.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you didn't see the 10, 20 years leading up to, to the overnight success component of that. Yeah.
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 Well, you also did something that was kind of interesting. Like when you pose a question in the opposite, and I find people are like, well, am I happy here? Or am I doing the right thing now? Well, what would you do in the opposite? Well, shit, I wouldn't leave, right?
Right.
This is where I should be. And sometimes it's really easy to identify the opposite as opposed to identifying where you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So when things go sideways for people in the mountains, they will call you up, or they'll go on YouTube and they'll check out your plethora of videos or content that you have out there. And they're like, what could have I done differently? Who do you call?
Who do I call? I probably don't, this isn't to sound arrogant, I probably don't call anybody anymore. There's a few, but I certainly have and had, but still do have mentors. People that I reach out to, that I talk to, that have helped me along the way when I get to, oftentimes it's not this T in the road. It's more of a fork. Do I go a little left? Do I go a little right? Maybe I forge my own path straight ahead. And there's always been mentors there. I was really lucky to have, just the way the military organization is structured, you have people that potentially are mentors that you can use. Of course, it's very humbling when somebody says, well, you're my mentor. You don't get to pick, right? It's kind of like the way it works. But yeah, there's some people, there's some of them aren't alive anymore, but but guys that took the time and took the chance to, take somebody who is maybe running a little ragged here, a little ragged there, a little too aggressive, and take them under their wing and just say, hey, have you considered this? Hey, have you considered that? Hey, I know you're not going to like this choice at the moment, but this will lead to better things, in the future, be it 6 months or a year or 2 years down the road. And I certainly appreciate that. And I was arrogant. I was absolutely arrogant enough for a very long time to think that I had, achieved all my quote success by myself, that I had done it, that I had done the hard work, that I had earned this. And I realized that, what an idiot I was, that, these mentors, these people, my dad included, have been there to just, steer me a little bit here, there. They're not, they're not going to control you, but you need that guidance. You need that advice. You need that little bit of aged wisdom. What you choose to do with it is, of course, up to you, but they've definitely been there.
Well, it seems like the natural arc of a high achiever and a leader as they go through, they're accumulating a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills, and then they're teaching it to others. And then it seems the natural arc later on is, even outside of their work or whatever they do, they want to share that because, our time here is limited and that knowledge is important. We want to share these sort of things. And it seems like you spend a lot of your time sharing your knowledge, giving a lot of yourself just out there on the internet, on these different videos. And what's driving that?
Yeah, well, it's a great area of focus, because if you came up to me and talked and we didn't know each other, I would share whatever I knew. But until COVID, when we were told to go and start working from home, and for the first time in my life, I would say I had some kind of balance in my life, because I'm all in whatever I'm doing. So if it's all work, it's all work. My wife and I don't have children, and she was in the military as well, where I could wake up, I could do a little work, I could go for a walk with her and the dogs, right? I could come back, I could do a little more work, I could do a workout, have lunch with her, whatever. Never had that in my life. And I win it. Nobody knew how long this whole thing would last, right? So I said, well, I'm going to do a couple things. I want to come out of COVID. I thought 90 days, 3 months. I was like, I'm going to come out of this better than when I went into it. So I'm not going to get fat. I'm not going to get out of shape. I'm gonna start my own business. I'm gonna stop drinking, and I'm gonna get in better shape than I started for the upcoming season. And it was not encouraged when I was in the military to be on social media. But now I'm working for a hunting brand, and I had social media just so I could follow people, just so I could see trends, what people were saying. And I was driving home one day, and it doesn't matter what the inciting incident was, but there was something I saw from another brand, and they had kind of, we'll say hijacked some things I had talked about. And if I'll take any credit, I'll say I brought what's called the rewarming drill, which you kind of referenced in the intro, to the hunting industry. I didn't create it in the military, but I brought it to the hunting industry, and these people were bastardizing it. And I thought they were doing it at the expense of the safety of the consumer, of the hunter, and more for the benefit of them and their sales. And that really upset me. And I didn't say anything publicly because that's not really who I am, but I said I could do three things. I could keep being mad about it and staying frustrated. I could forget about the whole thing and let it go, which I almost did. I said, or I could do something about it. And I decided that I was going to start this platform called Knowledge from Storms, which is a way of me saying I'm going to provide you the knowledge that I've got based on my experiences, good and bad, over 30 years in an incredibly, I believe, eclectic and unique environment that I was allowed to grow up in. And I'm going to put the information out there, and you can choose to take it or not. And that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you about it. But if you want to help, if you want the help, I'm here, because what I realized upon thinking through this whole thing, that I was being very selfish. that I had lived in this unique incubator of experiences and energy and professionalism that very, very, very few people will ever get a chance to have, right? To experience. And that me dying with all this experience or just passing it to my, my one hunting buddy was not doing the world any good. And because of that and the inciting incident I mentioned, I was like, I'm just going to start doing one video a week and see if people like it. And where does it go? And I had already been documenting all my lessons learned and writing some stories down and some things. I didn't want to forget what I had learned in the military. And it was interesting because, when you do reflect back, which I don't do often, but you're like, man, did it really happen that way? Was the technique really done that way? So I wanted it as a record. And then the thing just, started to evolve into what it is today. And, this whole thing has started to evolve in what it is today. But really, it was just me trying not to be selfish and die with this information because I thought that if I thought it was important and interesting, that other people might as well.
Yeah, well, clearly they do. And, you talk about social media. I have a difficult time with social media because it can be a time suck of just sitting there scrolling. Like, why do you want to watch what somebody else is doing? But it can also be a great educational platform if you're looking to find something. But I find maybe it's like this in all industries, but particularly in like the gun world and also in the hunting world, we tend to eat our own, like really
very
badly.
Much so. Yeah.
And I've never understood that. How do you deal with that?
I'm old enough and experienced enough. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me.
Excellent.
I don't. And again, I'm not going to call anybody out on social media because that's just not who I am. It's not the personality. At the same time, I am not going to argue with anybody about anything publicly on social media. I'm not going to do it. That's not to say that I'm always right.
Sure.
I'm just not going to do that in the public square. I obviously I work for Sitka, and people have their opinions about that or other brands or bow companies or optics or rifles. And I truly believe this. We're all in this together. We're all passionate about what we do. I call it the camo wars. I am not going to engage in the camo wars. I am not going to start taking our tribe and breaking it into sub-tribes to and I love your words, to eat our own and take this community and break it down, which only weakens it. I'll tell you a story. So the very first, this was January 2015, the very first thing I ever did publicly with Sitka was I went to it was called the SHOT Show, Shooters, Hunters, Outdoor Trade Show, giant show in Vegas. And I was there in the booth and, people are coming by and I'm having a great time and kind of learning this whole thing. And I purposely, when I had a break, which wasn't often, I purposely went down the aisle and walked into the booth and said hello and introduced myself to our two biggest competitors.
Good.
And I said, hey, I'm John Barklow. I'm here. Worked for Sitka. Just want to say hello. Nice to meet you. If you guys need anything, reach out. Here's my card. Floored them. And I'm like, why wouldn't I do that?
Right.
Yes, we can have healthy competition. I got friends at all the brands.
Yeah.
Clothing brands, footwear brands, weapons, you name it. I am not going to ruin a friendship over some BS business thing, right? It's just, like I said, even that company that I had friends with, I had friends there that did this one thing with the rewarming drill. I would never call them out publicly. Never. I had a conversation with them, privately about it, kind of cordial, didn't like bow up on them and want a fist fight. But I was like, guys, I said, honestly, if you needed to know more information, you could have just called. I'd have told you exactly how to do it. I didn't care that they did it. I cared how they did it.
I agree.
That's what I cared about, But I think, I don't know about all industries, but certainly ours. And I think it's because especially with the advent of social media, but I would say even probably when people were just writing for magazines, everybody is fighting for, the spotlight. Everybody's fighting for the clicks, the views, the marketing dollars, and all this kind of stuff. And, I'm fortunate that I don't, it'd be nice to have some of that and nice to sell the book, but that's not why I'm doing it. That's not my driving principle. I think that's just a component of it. And, people that sell themselves for those, views, they either don't last very long or their reputation gets tarnished. And the one thing I learned in the military, man, working in small special ops units, the only thing you have to bring in and take with you is your reputation. And it's really hard to earn, and it's really quick to tarnish. And you just don't want to do that. And I don't want to do that. So,
no. Well, it's interesting how you talk about, I won't have that conversation. I won't have that camo war online. I'll take it offline and have that conversation, and how quickly it can turn on its head. If you get into that argument online, and it can spiral and go further and further, and people are misinterpreting what things are said, or maybe they're just, but you just pick up the phone and call the person.
Yep.
The number of times that I've had interactions where somebody does something online and I'm able to, okay, I know this person, I can find this person and take that conversation offline. There was one time I remember that this woman had left a negative review for the company under some pseudonym. And I'm like, what is this review? What's this about? I'm trying to figure it out. I can't find this person. And I'm genuinely like I want to be able to solve their problem for them. And so I look at where else they leave reviews, and one of them is referencing, oh, this is a terrible place to work for. So I call up the workplace, talk to the boss. I'm like, do you know who this person is? I'm like, yeah, I know who this person is. They give me their contact information. Now, maybe I'm taking things a little too far, right? But I contact this girl up, and she's like, how did you find out who I was? Right? and I explained it to her. She's like, oh, you're a piece of work. You talked to my boss. I mean, that person. And she goes on, and I said, well, look it. All I want to do is I want to sort this out, see where the issue is, if there's something that we can do. And I said, I'm not asking you to take the negative review off. That's yours to do what you want, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking for A, B, and C. I can't give it to you. I'm not going to be held hostage to this whole thing.
Right,
anyways,
right.
What that ended up in was a glowing review, despite my assurances that I'm not giving her what she wanted. And she says, you know what? I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. And I really appreciated the conversation. But it humanizes both of us. I get the opportunity to see who I'm talking to. They get to see where I'm coming from.
Yep.
We got families. We have things that are depending on this. And I think that also helps build that community that the eat your own online mentality will kind of tear down.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think that's why podcasts have become such a popular part of our culture now, is because you can have these long conversations, right? It's not this clickbait and flying, zingers back and forth to people on social media without any kind of context or knowing who they are. And it's just kind of like, it's like eating junk food. It's like it's satisfying in the moment, but it's really not going to give you anything, to sustain you. So yeah, but good for you for doing that.
Well, it's interesting, and I apply that anytime that there's some level of conflict, or even if there's a level of not conflict, people are really happy. I'll do my best to. It's easy. Oh yeah, okay, things are good. We don't have to deal with that. But I do my best to try and put myself forward and thank the person and make it personal. When I was 16 years old. You're talking about station wagons earlier, so it jogs a memory. I take my wood panel station wagon. Yes. I'm in British Columbia.
Yes. Ours was fake wood. I don't know about yours in Canada, but ours was fake wood.
Oh, yeah, no, ours was 100% fake wood. You could peel that off.
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of a burgundy colored.
Yeah. Ours was like, yes, damn, we might have owned the same station wagon. Yeah.
Yeah. So I took my station wagon, which could barely get down to the end of my block, and I drove it a few hours up to a family cabin that we have in a remote area in the middle of winter. So it was like right after New Year's, I think, right around then, and this first time putting snowshoes on and my pack and going out and figuring all this stuff out, rented snowshoes from a local business. They stayed up late on New Year's Eve just so I could get off work and get these, everything I thought was lining up. The vehicle actually made it up there and didn't break down. And being 16, you're in good physical condition in your mind. You can do anything. And I've been there a lot of times. I know they've haven't plowed about 21 kilometers of this. So we've got about 21K hike. And then we've got, it's a fly in or hike in cabin anyways. Then the actual hike starts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and at that time, one of the owners, he was partner at Denton's, a large law firm. And so we had this space age, I don't even think it was Denton's end, but it was space age satellite photography that I could navigate from. And I'd never navigated off of satellite photos before, but I thought, I could just look at that and this photocopy of it and I can make my way there. Of course, everything looks different from the satellite photos. And when it snowed, all of the side roads look the same width as a normal road. And so we get lost, and it was middle of winter, I don't know, -12 or so. And all of our sleeping bags and warm weather stuff was left in the station wagon because we had to have enough room for all the beer we were bringing in, right?
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable. And, I remember the sun's out and you're working damn hard with a way too heavy pack on, and it's hot, even though it's -12 and you're out there with a t-shirt and you're working hard. And after a long time of not finding kind of where we're going, and I remember the sun was going down, I was trying to search down this one steep embankment area and fell in the snow a couple times. And I realized that my perception of it getting darker was more than the actuality of it getting darker. And I'm hypothermia. I'm not shivering anymore. Right. And, it all ended as it ought to. Obviously I'm here. The two people I'm with are still alive. Mind you, they never did want to go back again in the winter with me. But, that was my first kind of real, exposure to hypothermia and how to stay warm in a cold place. And I'd since had other ones where I've fallen in icy water and had to deal with it. But I would have, I think, really benefited, whether or not I would have actually been smart enough to listen to it, but I would have benefited from your experience and what you teach in rewarming and not getting hypothermic. Did you start that path in the military, or was there previous experiences that kind of pointed you in that direction?
No, I really got that. Insight and information and an education in the military. I mean, growing up in northern Ohio, it's cold and we build snow forts and and all those things. And I look back and I mean, my mom didn't know what she was doing. She was dressing us, but she was actually doing some of the right things. Dressing in layers and that kind of thing. But when you're underwater, you don't have to go very far down to hit what's called the thermocline, which is basically the sun's rays and heat can only go so far, and then you hit the cold layer. So I knew what cold was, but of course when you're diving, you just kind of gut through it, and then when you get back to the surface, they warm you up. But it wasn't until I started really pursuing, so about halfway through my career, this is before the war, I had extra time on the weekend. So I was living in California, my wife and I, and so I started going to the Sierra Nevada mountains. Got in with some mountain guide buddies, and they started teaching me, and it's like, well, maybe I'm just going to get out and become a mountain guide, ski guide, not a bum necessarily, but live a little bit, sure. little bit different than the military. And so I started acquiring all these skills, and I started reading up and exploring how different people were doing these things and look into some of the best. One of which, this guy Mark Twight, became a mentor of mine. We actually hired him in the military. But I don't know how I did it, but starting to email Mark like, hey Mark, what about food? Hey Mark, what about clothing systems? Hey Mark, what about and Mark was kind enough. I still have the emails. I printed them out. And so just started to learn. I started to incorporate some of that into. I was at a active duty SEAL team on the West Coast, and so I was teaching a lot of their diving. They called it combat swimmer at the time, or still do. Just a little more tactical way of diving, but and they asked me, they're like, well, how can we go from the water to the land and like up these cliffs? And so I started teaching them climbing, and then I started teaching them. I did a winter course in California, and then I got invited up to the training facility in Alaska, which is where I ended up, ultimately finishing my career. And they said, hey, come up and help us and bring some of your new ideas and those kinds of things. And so when I got it with the military, I enjoyed the crucible that it was. But up there, when you're teaching guys, especially when I got the call to actually go up as one of the handpicked people after 3 weeks after 9/11, and they said, hey, this is for real. We got to get guys into the Himalayas, into the Hindu Kush in winter immediately. And we have nothing to do it, and we have no tactics or procedures. They all retired and aged out with the Cold War. And guys were already, coming back and reporting like, don't know how to wear snowshoes. Snowshoes are bad. Weapons are freezing when you shoot on full auto. We're freezing our asses off because cotton BDUs are getting cold and freezing. And so we started to come up with ways that I like to say make the soldier as durable as possible. They were already mentally durable, but we needed to give them the tools that would help them in the field. And so this rewarming drill that we eventually came up with was one such way to do that, which is worst case scenario, we get these people wet after normally a 4-day mountain patrol when all they want to do is go back, take a hot shower, and drink a beer. And we make them get wet and go through this survival rewarming protocol, which not only gives them confidence in the gear, it gives them confidence in themselves, shows them the capability, and then it allows them, if they ever find themselves in anything anywhere remotely close to that they're not going to panic because they've already prepared, right? And so we even went so far as to, it was called a cold weather symposium, but they brought in some of the world's leading, I don't know if they were like cold weather physiologists or what the heck they were. They were scientists. And we tried all these different in-field hypothermic rewarming protocols. And the only way you can do that is by having some knuckleheads volunteer to get hypothermic or at least close to.
Sure.
So we'd swallow these RFID chips so they could monitor our internal body core temp and all these things. And we would, one or two at a time, we'd get in the water, we'd get cold, they'd warm us up or not, various levels. And we eventually created this protocol. So that's really where that all came in is, there was some theory, there was some, trying things on my own, freezing my butt off on Mount Rainier, in a snowstorm kind of thing. Kind of sort of getting there, but it really kind of all congealed when I got up to the training facility in Alaska and we started training guys for this uncompromising environment where failure wasn't an option. And I really appreciated that. And I'm sure I come off in my videos to a lot of people as like, some non-smiling hard ass, and that's not my intent. But I just default immediately back to those days because to me, like this could be life and death, and certainly have fun, but also don't discount that what you're really doing when you go out in the middle of nowhere is kind of putting the chips on the table. And that's your preparedness at that point is what potentially is going to determine, either a great story to tell around a campfire someday in the future, or this epic tale of survival and maybe even worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, the rewarming process. If I'm remembering right, I think you did a video with another Canadian guy, Adam Foss, and you guys jump into a couple of tanks and had to break the ice to get in there, and you're showing a process. But if I remember correctly, you don't take off your wet kit, you layer over top of it. And I've always been of the mindset of, like, when I get wet, I strip it all down, try and wring it out, get it back on, do what I can. What can you walk me through the thinking on that?
Yeah. So I don't know. I've done it for camera 4 or 5 times, I think. I did one version of it with another Canadian, Adam Yonke. He's another guy, BC guy from Kelowna. But so the idea is, if you understand your survival protocols, my answers are normally not short, but I'll try to keep this manageable. Your survival protocols, remember them as the rule of threes. 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Shelter is your number one survival priority. Your mind is your number one survival tool. Clothing is the human being's first line of defense against the elements. It's why the first caveman put on a loincloth, why the mountain men put on a buffalo robe, and why the modern day hunter puts on these technical clothing systems. It allows us to go out in environments that we would otherwise not be able to if we were just naked, right? So if you understand survival is your number one survival priority, depending on the situation. Now, I call it the static rewarming drill, because essentially you're staying in place. You're not going to move. Worst case scenario, you're out in really cold weather, inclement weather. You're in a remote location. You get wet. You're crossing a creek. The ice gives way. You're walking across a log. You fall off. You flip off the backside of a raft. You flip your canoe, whatever the case may be. You've only got a very short amount of time. And this is where you need to understand your protocol and have thought through it, hopefully trained to it, and also had that communication with whoever your partners are, so that you're not bickering. Because I like to say the clock starts. So we fall off the raft. We swim to shore. We've got our pack. The first thing I'm not going to do is take my clothes off. That clothing is shelter. The other first thing I'm not going to do is try to start a fire, which could be a futile endeavor, because I've only got a certain amount of time. And it varies, but let's just say I've got 10 minutes. That's not the time to go, what do I do now? So the protocol, big if, you have any of the modern technical clothing systems, you can keep that layer on your body. Yes, you can brush it off. You can try to get the water out. It's not going to absorb a lot of water to begin with, but there will be water. But the better course of action is to immediately take care of the immediate threat, which is losing more body heat and becoming hypothermic. So that's where, instead of taking clothes off, and I don't know what I'm going to do then, I could keep those clothes on and put, say, down or an insulated puffy jacket. Maybe I've got a puffy pants on. That's going to start to trap body heat. Now I can move. Do we need to get away from the river? Do we want to set the tent up? Because again, shelter is our number one priority. Secondary shelter being a tent, a lean-to, a tarp, something to get out of the wind, get out of the elements, is critically important. So we do that. Now, I'm still not going to take my clothes off, because I haven't stabilized the situation. So in that video Adam and I did, we were in there for 5 minutes. Our body core temp dropped, I don't know, 2.5 degrees, something like that. We immediately got out. We put our puffy on. We set the tent up. We got inside and got into our sleeping bags. Now we're adding more insulation. A modern technical clothing system and modern technical insulations can handle the moisture. They can handle these worst case scenarios. So now I'm in the tent. I've got my puffy on. I'm in my sleeping bag. You and I have stabilized the situation. I'm starting to warm up a little bit. The body heat that we've generated by moving around, setting the shelter up, has started to build some heat inside the system. Our body heat is actually going to start to, I call it, cook the system dry. It's actually going to start pushing moisture from that base layer away from my skin to the outer layers of clothing. Once it's away from my skin, I'm going to start to be able to, my body's going to be able to thermoregulate itself better, to warm itself, to cool itself. It doesn't matter if layer 2, 3, and 4 is damp or wet or soaking wet. It's what's right next to my skin. That base layer is critical. So now we can say, all right, you start the stove. I'm gonna get the water bottles. We're gonna get a hot drink in us. What are we doing? We're stoking our internal engine, this metabolic engine that runs off food and fuel. I'm gonna get some hot fluids in there. Hopefully there's some calories to it, and we're gonna start cranking that engine over, right? We're gonna get that diesel engine warming up. Okay, we good? Great. Now, eat a food bar or something, because I'm now going to boil water and we're going to eat a dehydrated meal. We're going to add more calories on top of that. We're really going to get the metabolism going. And when you watch the video of Adam and I get out shivering. Adam starts to shiver after he gets out. Very interesting that happened, but it did. But about 15 minutes in the tent, from getting out of the water, we're like, all right, we feel like we stabilized the situation. Yes, it still sucks. Yes, we're still wet. Yes, we still can't go anywhere, but we're not going to die right this second. An hour in, Adam, I think, stopped shivering. We're laughing. We're eating. Now that has been achieved, we've seeked equilibrium of some sort. Now's when you and I have the conversation. All right, man. Go ahead. Take off the clothes you have. If they're not drying yet, wring them out. Do you have an extra base layer? I don't carry any extra clothes, so the answer for me is going to be no. You're like, yeah, man, I've got an extra base layer and an extra mid layer. Okay, fine. Take what you have off, put the dry on, but you're going to have to put some wet stuff back on, and I'll tell you why. Because let's say we get out, maybe we put puffy on, maybe we set up a shelter and get in there, and maybe we eat, drink, have a hot drink. But now the next course of action is we're going to strip off all those wet clothes. We're going to climb into our sleeping bags, warm, full belly, everything's awesome. Until you wake up 3 hours from now, and those wet clothes are now a frozen clump of uselessness that now we truly are naked and afraid. Okay? Because all you've done is not only push off the tough decision, but you've made it worse. Because at some point in time, either when the storm's still going, or if you can weather it and wait for it's over, you're going to have to get out and put that cold, wet, frozen clothing back on and still figure out how to dry it out to get your ass out of the backcountry. So I'd rather do it up front, and with a modern clothing system, it's capable of doing that. I strongly encourage people to go and train and make sure that it works and how it works. Do it in your backyard. Don't do it in the middle of nowhere. But you will gain confidence in yourself and your kit. You will say, you know what? I don't like how that pant performs. I'm going to try that pant. I don't like how that sleeping bag performs. I'm going to try that one. The reason we did that in the military, because if a guy skydives into the ocean in the middle of the night and his dry suit zipper is not fully clothed and he gets wet, and now he's going to go climb into a boat, and that boat's going to scream 70 knots across the water to get to a place where he's going to go onto a land and stay there for the next 2 weeks. He ain't not going because he's wet. He ain't not going because he's cold. If the guy, is swimming to shore underwater and his dry suit leaks, or it gets torn on barnacles on a pier. You have to deal with it. Or you're crossing a canal in Afghanistan and it's cold out and you're going to be there laying still for the next 3 days. You have to have a capability of staying dry, warming up, drying out, staying focused. And so people always ask, yeah, bro, but I'm not a spec ops soldier. And I'm like, I understand that. But the human is the human. No matter what we're doing, that stays the same. Human beings warm up, cool down, dry off the same way, no matter what we're doing. And no matter the weapon in our hand or the mission set, a backcountry hunter and a special operations soldier, they share a lot of similarities in the sense that the mission says you're going in, you're not coming out till the mission's over. Okay, check. And there's really nothing but success. There's no option for failure here. Okay, that's pretty extreme. But I would argue you're going to drive 12 hours up into the mountains. You're going to take 2 weeks of vacation you saved up and spend all the time to drive across the United States, take time away from your family. It took you 10 years to draw the tag. You've got all this investment in clothing and gear, and you're going to go into the mountains to chase elk or mule deer or sheep. And now that freak storm comes in and gets you wet in August at 13,000 feet, or it snows in early September. Do you want to leave because you got wet? Do you want to leave because you got cold? I like to say, I'm not going to get pushed out of the mountains by Mother Nature. I'm going to leave on my own terms. Modern clothing, coupled with training and understanding its capabilities, allows you to do things that hunters even 20 years ago, let alone 50 years ago, excuse me, who were wearing cotton and flannel and denim. Because I always get that question too. Well, Granddad did it, Dad did it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But when I can sit on the glassing knob waiting for that one opportunity for that bighorn to poke himself out of the timber and I know where he is, I'm going to be there in the storm when Granddad got pushed off the knob and he's back in the wall tent drinking whiskey with the fire going. Because those jeans get wet, they're not drying out. I can walk around the glassing knob and dry myself out just with body heat. So when you start to take it from the extreme and start to apply it to more realistic scenarios, you're like, oh, okay, I'm not a spec ops soldier, but we still have this thing we want to be really successful in. And that success may be a dead animal. It may be just being able to go live there unsupported for 10 days and have a great time with my buddies and not die. Like whatever it is, the modern gear gives that capability. And so I've never answered a question ever in one sentence, so forgive me. But that's what this is all about, and that's where the rewarming drill came from. And I saw such benefit of bringing it to the backcountry hunting community. And that's why I've done the videos. That's why I build the clothing. That's why I test it. Similarly, we can talk about the one I did with Yankee, but even today when I'm building a new pant, a new jacket, I want to see what the performance of it is. I want to see how that new clothing layer integrates into everything else that I'm going to bring that I've already used. Is that new insulation really going to perform or is it not? Is that pant really going to dry or not? Is it really going to move moisture, that base layer, or is it not? And then I know what I'm dealing with and if there's a place for it to fit into the system. So real quick, can I talk about the active rewarming drill? So the only other way, and the way it's a great way to intro it, and it's because the other one's extreme. I understand that. It takes time. But you and I could go to a trailhead, pick our favorite trailhead, right? We could drive there, and we've got, if there's no creek, we bring a bucket full of water. Right? If there's a creek, bring the bucket, fill it with water when you get there. And have your backpack for like a day hunt or even an overnighter. Doesn't matter. And now pull off out of the back of the pickup truck, pull all the clothing you would normally wear to hike. Say a base layer top, a pair of boxers, pair of pants, maybe you got some type of like fleece hoodie. Put that in the bucket of water and get it as wet as you possibly can. Pull it out, wring it out, strip down, put that wet clothing on, lace up your boots, put on your pack, and you and your buddy start walking. Start a timer when you start walking. Be cognizant of it helps if it's a little cool out in the morning because it'll drive a sense of urgency. How far down the trail, how many minutes before we start to say, oh, you know what? I'm actually not cold anymore. Actually, can we slow our pace down because I'm starting to sweat? Think about how long it takes and be cognizant of, oh, my base layer's starting to dry out. My pants are starting to dry out. Normally it's going to be in the thighs, in the seat. Normally it's going to be in your upper chest, on your shoulders, right? Stop every hour and say, and check yourself. Is my base layer dry? Do I feel comfortable? If I fell in the creek walking over the log on that spring bear hunt, and I said, I'm 3 miles from the truck, I don't have the capability to set up a tent and go through John's static rewarming. I'm going to cut my distance to safety and improve my position and start hiking back to the truck. I'm probably going to get back to the truck in 3 miles and go, what was the big deal? I'm dry and warm.
Sure.
I can reset with some new socks and go back the next day. So I call that the active rewarming drill. And what that does is it shows you the performance of your system to manage moisture. And it gives you a confidence. And it also allows you to, again, to say, I like that pair of pants. I don't like that pair of pants. I like my synthetic base layer. I'd prefer merino wool. And go back and try it again. It's a great way to bond with your partners. Great way to get in a workout. And it's a great way to test the performance of your clothing system.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was like a 30-minute answer. But
no, that was a great answer.
There's a lot there. Yeah.
There's a few things I picked out. First one, kind of casually, living in British Columbia, coastal environment. It sounds really nice. We live in a rainforest, right? Well, it just means it rains all the time. And the idea of truly, like certain months, certain times of the year, of truly having things dry out it's just not happening.
It's not happening, right?
You're dealing with the wet. But the other one that might be paradoxical to people as they listen to it, I know I was trying to piece it together a little bit. So you talked about Mark Twight. Mark Twight wrote Extreme Alpinism. And, what is like Kiss, Kill?
Kiss or Kill.
Kiss or Kill. Yeah.
Yep.
A couple great books. Actually, he's an interesting guy too. He's free and open with his.
Can I share something with you?
Yeah.
I haven't said this publicly yet.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the first public announcement of this. Mark was gracious enough to write the foreword for my book.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know years ago, right when COVID first started, I was talking with Mark, and he's like, I'd love to do a podcast, but you got to come down to either my studio in Salt Lake. It's got to be in person. I'm like, 100%. I'm on it. I'll fly on a plane, and then all the planes were locked down, and I should pick that one up again. But,
well, he lives in Bozeman now.
Does he?
Right where I live. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he had two places, one there and then he had a studio. Okay.
He did, yeah.
Well, Bozeman, I think I can get behind that. I know friends, a good friend of mine is a IMFGA mountain guide, ACMG IMFGA mountain guide. He did a Special Forces selection in the UK there for SAS.
Okay.
And And he says, the whole IMFGA route to get certified is pretty intense. And this Mark Twight guy, he was actually the one who turned me on to him to begin with. A lot of his teachings that he has apply in my mountaineering world, but they also apply in my military world. And there's quite an interesting overlap between what Special Forces does and what Mark kind of goes over. But
I've learned so much from Mark. I give him credit for a lot, even in the book. I'm honored that he wrote the foreword, but
no kidding.
His teachings and what he did, he doesn't get as much credit because he doesn't talk about it. But what he did for the U.S. Special Operations community, I can't speak for other countries. I do believe he worked with others, UK and Canada. But what he did to help more than anything, I said, Mark, what you've done is you've provided a perspective and a mindset that we did not have. And Extreme Alpinism is a book about alpinism or alpine climbing, but most of us, to include myself, would say that was the Bible that allowed us to prepare for war in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And he never wrote it with that intent, but it was about the mental preparation and pushing the extremes and testing your limits and working, with your partners and crisis nutrition and all these things that, again, like your buddy said, there's so many crossovers. There's parallels that you can pull from, and you don't have to go as extreme as those folks, right? But for the backcountry hunter, you're still going into a remote area. You've got this goal. It's this dynamic, chaotic environment you can't control. All you can control is you, your gear, your preparation. Like, man, all those lessons still apply.
So the one part that I thought was possibly paradoxical, but you may have answered it in the trust in your kit. It is Mark Twight. He's known for go fast, go light, because the longer you're out there with a heavy pack, the more exposure you have, but know when to turn around. And there'll be times when he heads back. So the paradoxical part is you don't bring extra kit, but you're also not turning around. You're leaving on your own accord, right?
Wow, such a great point. So, what modern Alpinists are doing today is absolutely insane. Even Mark would agree. But of course, Mark was doing it back in his day.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing maybe they reference, maybe it's implied, maybe people who don't know or aren't aware don't take for granted is when you're cutting it to the fine razor's edge, you have to know your limitations, which comes from experience, right? And if those guys get a bad weather window, if the storm comes in, if they drop the stove, if somebody loses an ice axe, they're turning around and going back. They're turning around and going down, okay? Because they have not built a margin of safety in. They haven't built a big margin of safety in.
Sure.
It's very, very narrow because they're very, very fine-tuned and good at what they do. I think people take the thru hikers mindset, or they'll hear me talk on this podcast and be like, I'm doing it. I'm cutting the toothbrush. I'm not bringing the stove. John said don't bring any extra clothes.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm hesitant to say some of those things sometimes is just because you have to understand the context. One, I've got over 40 years of experience, 30 of it professionally. But the asterisk is, if you're going to go out there and you're going to run a cold camp, you're not going to bring a sleeping bag. You're only going to bring a bivy sack. You have to have the mature decision-making ability to say, I've got to turn around and leave now. That's still my terms. I'm not getting forced out, right? But I've purposely, consciously made that decision. I'm leaving. Now, if I'm flying in or packing in on horses for a 2-week moose hunt, I'm bringing more stuff because I'm staying and I've got the ability to bring more stuff. But if I want to go chase this mule deer that I've been seeing at 13,000 feet in Colorado, and my tactic is, hey man, I can get in there, I can kill this buck in 2 days and get out. And to do that, I need to travel as light as humanly possible. That's awesome. And I tell more stories in the book of failure than I ever do success.
Oh,
and oftentimes it's me doing these kind of like ridiculous things where I'm like, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to get out. But if it doesn't work, I have to pull the pin right now and leave because I have not built any margin of safety in to allow me to weather that snowstorm for 3 days. I got caught on Mount Rainier with a buddy one time. We were going in to climb it up and down in just one push.
Wow.
And we got stuck halfway up the mountain in a 3-day blizzard.
It's not a forgiving mountain.
Only thank goodness at the very last second did we throw in this little experimental tent, and it saved us. But what really saved us was the luck of another group of climbers coming in the blizzard, they must have been behind us and setting up a very big, robust north face tent that they allowed us to cook and socialize in their vestibule before we had to go back into this windy, drifty, barely adequate shelter on the mountain, because our only other alternative at that point was to, hunker down, which is what we chose to do. But if without them, we might have had to say, we're going to have to find our way back down the mountain through the crevasses in a blizzard, which is obviously not a very good choice.
Was the other group that came up, and probably not, but just weird coincidences in the world, was the other group that came up, were the Canadians or the Americans?
Boy, I wouldn't even remember. Okay. Honestly, I wouldn't even remember. It's been so long ago. Fair enough. It was like a North Face V25, the big one.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Buddy of mine told me a similar story, Canadian fellow, about some Americans. And
hell, it might have been, man. If you want to talk, that would be a crazy coincidence.
That would be a hell of a coincidence.
That would be, because I give those guys a lot of credit for saving us. Yeah.
Okay. Now my mind totally went on the off track. You were talking about mindset. There was one other piece in there I wanted to touch on, but I'm sure it'll come back.
Crisis nutrition, or
yeah. Well, on the mindset side, how do you keep your mind straight? How do you? I mean, there's books and there's lessons and courses on mental toughness, but what do you do?
Well, the first thing is, I think that when you plan and prepare, that creates confidence. And that confidence allows you to endure some difficult times, and it allows you to make better decisions than if you didn't have that confidence, based on not, bro science and bravado, but, actual preparedness and planning. So I think that is the first component of that, i.e., I tested my system, I shot my weapon, I know how to set up the tent in the dark, in the wind, whatever. I think the other part of that is, for me, and you hear this a lot from other people going through, different military selections, or, running a 200-mile ultra race or whatever, is keeping your world small and not overwhelming yourself, which for me is easy to do because I'm like this planner and I'm thinking details. I can't think of the 200-mile race. I can't think of the 10-day hunt. I can only think of, getting to the next rest break, getting to the glassing knob, getting to camp, the next meal, eating the elephant in small bites, right? Okay. Because if not, it's real easy, especially when you're new to it, to stand there at the trailhead and look up into the mountains, or get dropped off, and the last sounds of the float plane, and you have nothing but your own thoughts in your head to really self-destruct. And at that point, it's, what's the first task? What's the second task? What's the third task? When's the next meal? Hey, let's see who can spot the first legal ram, and that person buys the beer when we get out of here, or that person, gets first shot, or whatever it is. And you just set these really short goals that you can work through. And that's not to say I'm not immune to becoming overwhelmed at times, but then I just try to look at the immediacy of what I need to do next. And so I've talked to a lot of guys who are like, yeah, I've got this, 7-mile hike to get into base camp, as an example. And I've got altitude or a pass to go over, or whatever it is. And, it kicks my butt. And I'm like, well, have you ever thought about just hiking for 50 minutes and stopping for 10, and hiking for 50 minutes and stopping for 10? And so instead of thinking about the 7 miles and the pass you need to go over, you're thinking about, well, in 50 minutes, I'm going to stop. We're going to get something to eat, get some water, look at the map, and then we're just going to go for another 50 minutes. And we're going for another 50 minutes. Now, I'm really bad at that, and I'm really quite good at putting my head down and not wanting to stop. But I realized and I learned when I was instructing, and I had guys, and not just from a military tactical perspective, but being able to manage people in a collective, in a group, and like, hey, do we need to, strip a layer? Do we need to, fix a blister? Do we need to do that? And when the group decides we're going to do this at 50 minutes, then everybody holds each other accountable. And you're like, no, you said we'd stop at 50 minutes. Look, we're stopping at 50 minutes. And so all these little things I think help. Planning and preparing build confidence. Confidence allows you to make good decisions. Keeping your world small, thinking about the immediate task at hand, and then just going from there, right? And all that over time, based on some experience, really starts to build. It's not necessarily mental toughness, because you can talk to people who are like, bro, I ice bath every day. I hit my workout. I do my runs. I'm up at 4 a.m., whatever it is. They have the discipline. They have the mental discipline. They have the toughness. But what I think oftentimes, and I'm guilty of it because I love it, but we romanticize the backcountry. We romanticize the mountains, okay? And we should to some extent, but we should also tell them ... that it's lonely, that it's painful, that you're hungry, that you're thirsty, that your feet hurt, that you question everything you're doing. You wonder if you'll ever be able to kill another animal ever. Are you good enough to be here? What if things to death? Like, that's part of it as well. And I think that if you're coming from, and I talk about this, I write about this, but when you're coming from an organized sport, soccer, football, baseball, even ultra runs where there's aid stations and there's a time limit. Well, they're going to pull me off the course at 12 hours. Well, we only play 15-minute quarters. Or, if I get hurt, the doc's going to run on the field and take care of me. Or there's going to be a referee to call a timeout if I need it. None of that happens in the mountains. It's not an organized sport. And I think that sometimes it's easy to get overwhelmed, like, bro, did I pack everything I needed to? Do I have enough food? Can I warm up and dry out if I get wet? And you start to question yourself until you get some experience. And it's not this organized thing. And so I think you owe it to yourself, or you owe it to the people that you're leaving behind, your family, to prepare, because I don't know of anybody, certainly I have never come back from a backcountry hunt and said, I was over-prepared. I was in too good a shape. I crushed this and was better than I needed to be. I've never done that.
No.
I always come back going, I need to do this better. I need to do that better. I need to remember this. I need to bring that. Now, I've had good hunts where things have gone well, but there's always something more to learn, right? And so I think when you're really fit in the gym, you can kick your butt at altitude because you're trying to do your splits. It's like, that's not the kind of environment it is. The environment is you need to be durable and you need to be capable of enduring the elements to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve when you're out there.
So if my AI overlords are correct in my research for this, and like I said, I got 7 pages of research I was putting together ahead of time, which has bit me in the butt before. That was Jim Shockey talking with him, and it said that he was with I kept digging in, like, what's one thing no one's asked him about? What's one, and he says, ask him about his time with the PPCLI, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. So I ask him, the what? The PP what? Anyway, it's like, all right, how do I recover from this one? But, okay, you talk about hunts where everything go well. What about something I read about? I think it was a BC hunt where pack mules and things went wrong. Yeah.
No, like I said, I've had lots of success. I've been blessed. I'm, not going to tell you I haven't been and all that, but
beautiful.
What can be overlooked when you see things like that is all the hunts where, you didn't get anything, where something did go wrong, where I got lonely and decided to leave early and then regretted it for the next, year till I could go back and kind of, redeem myself, so to speak. And yeah, that particular hunt, and it's not because it's bad or anything. I won't mention the outfitter. He's a friend of mine. They do great. But I'm not the best horseman by any means, right? And this was going to be my first real, Canadian horseback hunt in the middle of nowhere. We flew in, and I'm going into this hunt with an incredible amount of experience, not necessarily with horses, but yeah. So everything was going good. I mean, the hunting wasn't that great. I never even saw a bull moose. But we had some success in camp, had some fun. But on the ride out, because we were the last people in camp, we were going to trail out back to the road, and the conditions were not good. Everything was iced over. Winter was coming in, pushing us out of the mountains in mid-October. And long story short, in the dark, riding without headlamps through the most treacherous part of the trail, where, I don't know if memory serves, there were a lot of horse skeletons from other from other horses who had not been fortunate enough to make it out of there. We'd already gone through some bogs that almost swallowed a few horses. Anyways, luckily we were riding through this thing in the dark, and I'm just following the horse. My horse is following the horse in front of him, which is being trailed by one of the wranglers. And she's like, yeah, don't, just keep the headlamps off and this and that. And we had 24 horses, I think, a lot of horses, a lot of people. And the next thing I know, because I can't see anything, I just realized that my horse has fallen on top of me, and I am pinned against, thank God, a flat boulder on my left side, a tree pushing on the back of my neck, and this giant 1,400-pound, I think he was a Frisian, laying on top of me in the dark, with guys behind me that are going to ride right on top of me because they don't know anything's happened. So, of course, because I was in the Navy and I got a merit badge in swearing, that I started swearing out loud, and immediately. So nobody rode on top of me, but immediately I see headlamps start popping on. And I knew that I had to get out from underneath this horse really quick, because if he started to thrash, he was going to tear me up. And so luckily my left foot was out of the stirrup. I took my pack off. I got out from underneath the horse, who is now stuck in this hole. And as the lights come on, I turn my light on. We are riding through a giant boulder field with this very narrow, circuitous path through, and he had just stepped wrong one way and fell in like a 3-foot hole, and is now wedged in this hole between these boulders. So luckily we were able to cut down that one little tree that had pinned me, took off his saddle, and eventually got him to stand, or it probably wasn't going to end. He was going to be another skeleton on the trail. And so it worked out okay. Seemingly I was unhurt. I'm not going to necessarily tell you it was a direct result of the wreck, but I will tell you that the wreck did nothing to, it probably sped up me getting my left hip replaced, which would have been 2 years ago, which would have been, I don't know, 6 years probably post horse wreck. To add insult to injury of getting in the wreck, I call it a wreck. I don't know what you're supposed to call it, but getting in the horse wreck, because it felt like a car wreck. Never seen a legal bull. Having everybody in camp kill wonderful moose and mountain caribou. To add insult to injury, I got Giardia 15 days after coming home. And that's honestly the part that I'm most upset about, because hunting's hunting, things happen. The reason I'm upset about the Giardia I'm not upset at the outfitter. I could be. Like I said, he's a friend of mine. But me and my two buddies got it. Nobody else, the outfitters, the wrangling, they didn't get it. The guides, they'd been living there for 3 months, right? Their guts were probably used to it. What upsets me is that I should have known better. And not that I trusted people wrongly, but I should have brought, because we were flying in and riding horses, and I know that water is such a priority. And I'd been drinking water or choosing to drink water selectively from streams without filtration or purification for decades. And I knew on day 1 or 2 that we were probably in for it because of the water sources we were gathering it from, where the horses were hobbled. And I'm pissed at myself because I didn't bring a filter. I didn't bring a SteriPen. I didn't bring something to back myself up, and I should have. And so that's an unforced error on my part. So yeah, the horse rack, yeah, the not good hunting. It was still a wonderful adventure. That's the part. Getting the Giardia because I didn't think through a possible scenario is what irritates me.
Yeah, that's Giardia. Does it stick around for a while?
As soon as you take the medication, like within hours, you feel much better and you don't have the symptoms.
Okay.
Within 12 hours, all the symptoms are gone. I think you take it for 7 to 10 days. I can tell you that it is a humiliating, miserable experience that I would only wish upon my worst enemies. I never want to get it again, and I will do everything in my power to never get it again. But I've heard, because the first guy that said he had symptoms has had it like 3 or 4 times, and he said his doc said that once you get it, you're more prone to potentially getting it again.
Okay.
How I got it, it was 13 or 14 days post getting out of the field. The gestation period's supposed to be no longer than, it's like 7 to 10, 7 to 15 maybe. I still don't know exactly where, how, but maybe that was just the way my body was able to process it. But yeah, one guy got it in 7 days. One guy's symptoms started in 10, and mine started like 13 or 14.
So this last November, I had knee surgery, probably too much weight going up and down in the mountains. And, a friend of mine, he's been on the podcast a couple times now, ex-PH from Africa, and he does security. He was Oprah's bodyguard and a few famous people in there. So those are fun episodes to talk about. But he says, Trav, don't let the old man in. Okay. Now you've had your hip replacement there. What do you do to not let the old man in? Or is there a process of gracefully accepting things? Because in my mind, I don't see a gracefully accepting things for myself.
No. So I'm going to try not to swear, but I'm just going to say heck no. I'm going to say heck no.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to tell you something. So I told you about the left hip I had replaced 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had my right replaced 10 weeks ago.
10 weeks ago.
And I challenge you to come do a hike with me, get in the gym, and tell me I had my right hip done 10 weeks ago.
Good for you.
Because I just had to do it. And so it's maintenance. And it's like I'm going into it going, hell no, this isn't going to stop me. Hell no, this isn't going to define me. Yeah, it might take me, I think it took me 2 weeks. It took me 2 weeks longer to like get back to, I'll call it 98% this one than last one. 2 years older,
Sure.
But I trained for surgery.
That's
why I originally quit drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I changed my diet. I needed to remove inflammation. I needed to take weight off. I needed to get more mobile. I needed to get stronger and fitter for surgery so I could recover quicker.
That's a piece.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I'm the quote old guy, right? In the military, I'm 42, and I'm running around with guys that are 18 and 20 are phenomenally fit.
Mm-hmm.
How did I keep up? How did I balance it? Not by saying, hey guys, we're going to take a break because I'm tired. It's because I've got a lot of experience. I've got good technique. I know what I'm getting myself into, right? And so that balanced out their fitness. It's the same thing with the backcountry hunter. But no, I think it's a mindset, going back to mindset. And, am I as, I lost a step when I turned 40. I said I lost half a step when I turned 40. I lost another half when I turned 50. But I've also got more experience. And so I challenge people. I'm like, yeah, I'll go out with you. I might keep up, I might not, but I'll probably be the last person standing here too. and I'm certainly here to answer questions when you have them. So it's just a different way of shifting it, right? I'm trying to be smarter, not be harder, because I can't be. But I'm not giving up. I mean, giving in is like, that's a death sentence. I might have to hunt elk or mule deer or sheep differently when I'm 60 or 70 than I did when I was 30 or 40. But that doesn't mean you don't have to go and do it.
Agreed.
It's just a little bit of a sliding scale. But I'm not letting the old man in. I'm not letting the old man in at all. I'm the oldest guy. There's me and another guy are tied. But I'm the oldest guy at Sitka. And I've got me and my buddy Eric, we've got most people at the company beat by 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. But it's attitude, man. It's
100%.
I mean, I have no idea how old you are. Don't care. But I know you get after it. I can just tell by your attitude. You're not going to give up. If you love it enough, like I think we do, you're not going to find excuses to quit. You're going to find reasons to keep going, and you're going to just modify your behavior. And yeah, I had to stop drinking. And I told myself, John, you can't do the same thing at 50 that you were able to do at 30 and expect to perform the same.
Right.
You have to start modifying behavior. And I did. And I'm happy with that. And I'm sure I'll have to refine it a little bit going forward. And that's fine. I'm willing to pay that to keep doing what I love.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I don't think we've touched on your book enough. Who's the optimal audience for the book that's going to be coming out?
So this podcast so far has been absolutely wonderful because it hasn't just focused on hunting. I think we've talked about, the climbing aspect and just, through hiking and things like that. My book draws on, I'll say 40 years, but really specifically 30 years of experience in the mountains, on my own adventures, teaching professionally, teaching thousands of guys, professional search and rescue teams. And basically I try to bring all my lessons learned. Here's what I did wrong. Here's what I learned from it. Here's how you can maybe avoid the same mistake. It is for anybody who is looking to go out into the mountains, out into the backcountry to pursue any kind of outdoor adventure. The book is for them. I talk about backcountry hunting. I talk about alpine climbing. I talk about backcountry skiing. I talk and relate to stories of, military training. And I use those stories to provide context, to provide some authenticity to what I'm speaking of, and to drive home key points of learning where I say, hey, if I were you, I'd learn to ride a horse before you go to British Columbia on a 14-day horseback hunt. And here's why. That's the knowledge from the storms that the book is named after. So there's hunting stories for sure, but there's stories of, partnerships in the mountains on climbing trips where things did not go well. But I believe those stories and those lessons can be extrapolated to any backcountry partnership, no matter what you're doing. And crisis nutrition, that's what I call how we fuel ourselves in the backcountry in this kind of dynamic environment. I talk about stories from the military. I talk about stories, and things Mark related to me. So it's an amalgamation of adventure. I call it part adventure narrative, part instruction manual. And anybody who's interested in going outdoors and just pursuing whatever it may be, I think there's something in it for them.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to reading it. Is there anything that we should be talking about that we haven't talked about?
Well, my mind was going down because I've got some other stuff online, but let's not promote that at the moment.
Well, hold on. You do have something else. Isn't there an outdoor class?
Yeah, so
OutdoorClass.com?
I'm one of the instructors for what this is called. It's called OutdoorClass. It's OutdoorClass.com. It's owned by Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And they've got a wonderful stable of instructors, some of the best at what they do in their fields. Everything from, Corey Jacobson, elk hunting, Randy Newberg, antelope hunting. Remy Warren's got a course in there, I think, on backcountry mule deer hunting. There's cooking, so I'm building out my courses on kind of the things we've talked about. I've got a course on backcountry mission planning. My second course is survival for the modern outdoorsman. My third course is backpack hunting, and I've got 8 more that I've got coming out. 2 of which, have already been filmed. And, for an annual, I think a meager annual membership,
It is meager.
You don't get access to John Barklow and his courses. You get access to everybody in the ecosystem.
And it's worth it for just one of them.
I agree. Even for me, it's like, man, to have access, we talked about it, to Corey Jacobson's Elk 101 that has probably 70 individual chapters now is just insane, but there's unique courses. Randy Newberg talks about antelope hunting. I don't know if there's another course in the world about hunting antelope. He talks about cow elk hunting. I'm like, who does a course about cow elk hunting? Well, Randy did, so yeah, that's unique. So there's some fun stuff there. And then that's a pay to play, but I also work with Montana Knife Company, and on their YouTube channel, which is, I believe, Montana Knife Company, there's the MKC Survival Guide. And I've got, I think, 60 videos or close to so far. 60 videos on there. And it's everything we've talked about and then some. I mean, everything. I'm going to do some stuff on map reading, and there's mindset. We actually did one of the rewarming drills with Josh Smith there. But that's just, lots and lots and lots of content there that's free that people can just dive into, probably go down all kinds of rabbit holes. Again, at this part of my life, I mean, I'm still having my own adventures, but I really just feel this compulsion, this need to give back. I like to tell people, at the end of the day, you've got to climb the mountain for yourself. I can help you start a little bit higher on the mountain, but ultimately you've got to do the rest, on your own. I can help you avoid maybe some of the common pitfalls, and, you don't have to make all the same mistakes I made or had to remake the same mistakes that I had to relearn. But it's a great resource. I think there's so many great resources. These podcasts are another great resource. But, ultimately it's like, go out there and have your own adventures. And if you don't have all the gear, or you're not ready to go in the middle of nowhere for 10 days, it's like, who cares? Go out for an overnight, go out for a long day, hunt around the house, then hunt in another province or state, then maybe hunt in another country. It's like, I like to say that I'm a student of the game. And I think if you approach it that way, which is to say, I'm never going to be a master, but I'm going to seek mastery. And that ever since that 13-year-old kid in Ohio, I've been on this lifelong journey of exploration and adventure. And I happen to be at a certain place on my journey, and everybody's going to be at a different place on theirs. And it's all been enjoyable. And I think I haven't always felt it was enjoyable all the time, but I tell people, it's like, but enjoy where you are, enjoy where you are. I get it all the time because I live in Montana. And people are like, man, like, I want to go public land bow hunting for elk in the middle of nowhere, the mountains, the backcountry. And I'm like, dude, that is an exceptionally great goal. But you were talking, in my opinion, at least a master's level type of hunting with everything that you've got to know and learn and do to even give yourself a chance of success, let alone when you kill, how do you get it out? And I'm like, I just wouldn't start there. I'm not trying to not encourage people, but I just wouldn't start there. I'd say I aspire to do that at some point in time. Rifle, bow, doesn't matter, but enjoy where you are now. And if where you are now is I can only go do a day hunt for mule deer, fine. Or I'm going to go out west for the first time and chase black bear in the spring. That's awesome. Or, hey, I just drew my first tag and it's an antelope tag and I know I'm going to have a stalk every day. And if I kill, I don't need mules to get it out of the mountains. It's like, start there. Go backpacking. Go hike to a high lake and run a trout line or learn how to fish or live from a survival shelter overnight and learn to start fires in the snow. It's like this wonderful adventure that you can have year round that you don't need a tag. You don't need to draw something. You don't need a deadline hanging over your head. So, when people ask me, I just encourage them. I'm like, start somewhere and go do something and just get momentum. And if you don't have all the right gear, that's fine. You don't have to buy John's 8-piece clothing system. Just get something and go, but understand, just like we talked about, if you don't have all the right gear, if you don't have all the right experience, also don't charter the Beaver to go drop you off in the middle of nowhere for a 14-day caribou hunt.
Right.
Just be a little realistic about it.
I love it. Well, John, there is a lot more that I had down here, but I'm also conscious of kind of the time.
I apologize for my long-winded answers.
Oh, but I love it. We didn't even get into the invisible cloak stuff that I had here.
No, we weren't supposed to talk about that.
But I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
I did too.
And I'm looking forward to, I know we were talking about ahead of time. I'm looking forward to when you're back up here in BC and we get together, but I think I might have to come down to your neck of the woods as well. And
well, you're more than welcome. The Bozeman area, and maybe you'll get to, talk to Mark and meet him and maybe do that podcast.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Silvercore podcast.
Thanks for the invite, Travis.